Without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our presenter today. She's the Director of EAP and Employee Wellness for Intermountain Healthcare. This position includes the Employee Assistance Program and the Live Well program for employees and their families. She is a clinical social worker with a PhD in social work. She has worked for the Intermountain Healthcare for 25 years and loves the opportunity she has to influence others to live well, both at work and at home. She practices what she preaches, and she lives in Park City, where she loves to read, garden, and ride her horses, Henry and Gus. I love it. She's here today to talk about what happy women know and help me in introducing and welcoming Terry Flynn.
It's my pleasure to be here, and we're going to jump right into what happy women know. And for you men, you might get something out of it too, okay? But it really is geared for we women and the challenges that we have in being happy. Aristotle said it right. Happiness is the whole aim and end of human existence. It's truly what we're all striving for and what we want. And maybe we're not always clear about when we're happy, but we're pretty clear when we're unhappy. So it's on this journey of having more moments of happiness that we're really addressing today. There's actually researchers have really spent a good deal of time focusing on what makes people happy. And the research I'm sharing with you is from an author named Martin Seligman, who wrote a book on happiness. And his study has really been confirmed by many others since. And he essentially says that there's a formula, there's 3 pieces that makes up what happiness, makes up happiness. The first part is called set point. Let's see if that's what. And this is a really interesting concept, but I think you'll find it true. About half of our happiness really comes from a level that we probably were born with. So if you think of a thermometer, some people were born, with a high threshold of happiness, maybe up in the 90s, and some maybe more in the 80s or the 70s. And that threshold is what we kind of hover around. And interestingly enough, they've looked at people who win lotteries, the thing that we would all love to do. And what happens to them, do you think, with their happiness? Does that just make them instantly happy?
No.
Yeah, well, it actually does for the day. Yeah, there's some time, I think, when they're really happy. But over time, they go back to that set point. On the other hand, people who become quadriplegics, what happens to their set point? It drops, but guess what? Over time, it goes back to hover around the set point. So up or down, we kind of come back to this resting spot of our set point. Additional information or additional research that supports this notion is something that probably is even more common for all of us. How many of you right now think, well, I would be happy if I had... What fill the blank?
More money.
More money? Or when I get my health, yeah, if I had better health. Or we add, I would be more happy if I lost 10 pounds, right? Or I'll be really happy when I get that new car. I'll be really happy when I retire with more money and the new car. Exactly. So we all have kind of this thing that's out there, and we're thinking, well, I will really be happy when that happens. We might call that the treadmill. And what the research is, and I think you might confirm this, is, well, we work towards that, and when then we get it, and how long are we happy for? A day. Uh-huh. Or a little longer. And then what? Yeah, and Paula said it. And then we're like, okay, no, that didn't last too long. Now I need this, right? Now I need a bigger garage to put the car in. So they've also seen that while we think things are going to make us happy, and they do for a moment, we kind of start back on the treadmill, and now we're back at the start again, kind of moving over and over on these. Always landing or coming back to this set point that's about 50%. The next piece about that 20% or 10% of happiness, so 50% set point, 10% about external circumstances. And you would think that, well, if you lived in St. George, you would guarantee to be happy, right? Because it's sunny so often. And if you were married to a hunk who lived in St. George, even better. Well, it turns out that there are some external circumstances that do affect our happiness. Number one being that if you live in a wealthy democracy and not in an impoverished dictatorship, that has probably one of the strongest effects on happiness. And that just gives us no excuse at all, right? Because we're all here in an amazing democracy. Second, getting married has an effect, meaning it has a correlation, but they're not quite sure which direction it goes. So meaning, are you happy because you're married, or were you happy and then that's why you got married? Do you know which one is it? And I'm sure for all of you who are married, there are days you're thinking, yeah, that really does relate to my happiness or unhappiness. This is an interesting thought. If in fact, and I don't quite know how and where they found these people, but if you think that you could avoid all negative events and negative emotions, well then that must mean you're happy. What do you think? Turns out only has a moderate effect. Now, I don't even know where they found those people. But apparently only a moderate effect. Having friends like you all, like the sisters that she just talked about, again, has an effect, but they're not sure the direction. Do you have friends because you're happy, or are you happy because you have friends? We don't know. And religion, just a moderate effect. Now, some of these things, why I would list these is because they're not easy to control. Some of them are not always within our control. And again, they only have that 10% of effect anyway. But really what has the biggest effect then is this 40% of intentional activity. And given that that's the part that we probably have the most control or influence on, that's what I want to talk to you about today. And it really is the PowerPoint. It's really what we can do in order to be happy. There's probably a lot of books. There's thousands of books. We've been reading and writing books on happiness since Aristotle. But what I want to share with you after lots of years of being a therapist and a teacher and a woman is to share with you the 6 things that I know that contribute and determine what makes a woman happy. And at the end, you may want to add a few more of your own. So we'll give a little bit of time to say, and what else would you have put on the list? Okay, so here's my 6. They choose happiness. They let go of what they can't control and focus on what they do control. They understand the power of influence. They are grateful and mindful. They forgive, not blame, and they love to grow. So let's talk about each one of those. It's hard to think, but it really is simple enough to say that happiness is simply a choice. Abraham Lincoln, who suffered from Great Depression, and I think that background is essential when he says, most folks are as happy as they make up their minds to be. And I've watched myself, and I'm so surprised when there are moments and times when I'm choosing to not be happy, right? What other emotions sometimes want to take precedence over that? Anger, frustrated, worried. Yeah, being a victim, being offended. Yeah. Huh? Sadness. Yeah, I just need to be sad. So there's conflict in emotions where there are days or moments where we're really not choosing to be happy. And if we're not careful, we move into those other emotions and they stay with us. And we almost lose the fact that happiness is a choice. We really can choose that. One of the best books of how women choose and that models the things I'm sharing with you today is a book called The Hiding Place. How many of you read that by Corrie ten Boom? A few. If you're looking, someone said several times, I almost think it should be annual reading because it is so inspiring. It's about a young woman who was not a Jew, but who ended up in the Jewish war camps. And her remarkable journey of choosing to be happy, even in the Nazi war camps. It's a remarkable book. If you want more inspiration on how to do this, I would recommend it. Along with that, I love this quote. I discovered I always have choices, and sometimes it's only a choice of attitude. That's it. Regardless of what circumstances we may find ourselves in, if we remember that we have the power to choose, that's really what we can own. There's so many things we don't control, but that one is in our control. So as you come here, I'm going to assume that you're all choosing to be happy. Okay, so we check. You got the first one. The second one is probably the most powerful that I see day in and day out. That we as women and men are skewed in what we think we control and what we don't. We get confused with the reality of life. Epictetus said it just right. Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not. It is only after you've accepted this fundamental rule and learned to distinguish between what you can and cannot control that inner tranquility and outer effectiveness become possible. So let's not leave before we're very clear about what you control and what you don't. When I teach a class on this, I use 3 circles. The outer circle is called the circle of concern. It's from Stephen Covey. Those are all of the things that you can stress over, you can worry about, you can stay up night losing sleep over, but which you have no control. What's on that list? Aging. Your children. Who they become. Teenagers. The traffic. The weather. Spouses. The economy. War. Crime. Taxes. Anything else?
House problems.
Yeah. Things breaking. Yeah, disasters, catastrophes. Anything else? No, let's just go back a little bit about those people. Who else is on that list? I heard teenagers and spouse. Anyone else that you don't control? The president. Let it go. Relax. She said it with a little bit of stress. I just want her to relax. Yep. Yeah, so it turns out the biggest category there is other people. All other people. No one. You don't control anyone except yourself. Right. Now, this is crazy. We could spend a whole hour talking about, well, then why in the world do you try to control all those people? Because you're spending about 80% of your time trying to control them. What do you get out of that? Oh, yeah, you do. Stress. And unhappiness. Because darn it, they're not doing what you want them to do. And if they only would, they would be good and you'd be good. Right? It's pretty crazy how often we spend our time trying to control them. And I want you to now remember when you're trying to control them that it's on the same list as the weather. Okay? So if you were spending your whole time on the phone, well, Hazel, I don't know what to do with my kids. Oh my gosh, can you believe have you seen what they're wearing? Oh, they just should change that. Well, if you were talking about the weather like this, like, oh my gosh, have you looked outside? Someone needs to do something about that. I gotta go read a book on how to get these clouds out of the way, and it's 93, it needs to be 89. I have a party plan. Don't they know? It's on the same list, you guys. Controlling other people, trying to control the weather. We've got to remember. So what can we do about things on that list? Nothing except let it go. Yeah, let them go. And I really want to dig just a little that you don't control what other people think, feel, do, value, or believe. You don't control whether another person is happy or not, whether they change or not, what they think of me. Here's another big category we wouldn't want to miss. You don't control the past or the future. I'm pretty good in my life about the people part. Where I get hung up is often in the past or the future. And I tend to go to the future, and I'm always worrying and stressing about it. I waste a lot of energy on that. So this is the one on this list that I have to pay attention to. And when we let go of these things, we can often stop worrying. Because if you start looking, catch yourself when you're worrying and saying, is this something I can control? That may help you to stop your worry time. Here's Corrie ten Boom again, and I love her quote. Worrying is carrying tomorrow's load with today's strength, carrying 2 days at once. It is moving into tomorrow ahead of time. Worrying doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrow, it empties today of its strength. Isn't that a profound thought? And if in fact we could reduce that worry to things we have control over, we could reduce it even more. Now, well, if happy women give up what they don't control, what do they focus on? This is the replacement list. You could worry about how you respond to everything you don't control. Okay? That's the number one thing you have control over. You ultimately own and are accountable for your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your values, beliefs, your strengths, your knowledge. All of those things are within your power. You own your goals, your dreams, really what matters most to you. With regards to time, you own this present moment. Really nothing else, but right here where we are, all together. You own what you do with your health. You own whether you learn to tweet or not. And whether you're going to be a victim or accountable. Isn't it interesting, as I focus on this list, isn't there a feeling of like, yeah, that is what I control? There's some almost energy when you come back to what you do control and let go of all those things that you don't. What I've seen over and over again as women move to this place of focusing more of their time on what they do control, then they begin to see it just becomes so much more clear about what's most important to me. You know, because now I'm not worrying about all these other people. I'm focusing on, oh, this really is my priority. This is my purpose. We also get more energy. If you're looking for more energy, which I think we all are, because the prevailing feeling is I'm sick of being tired, is that part of that energy, if you're spending it on things you don't have control over, it's sucking you dry. If you come back to what you do, you'll find more energy and you'll be more efficient in how you're spending it. And I think the other final concept is once you let go of what you don't control, focus on what you do, you discover the next principle of what makes women happy, and that is the power of influence. Okay? So let me ask you one of the most important questions of the day. What's the difference between controlling someone, and influencing them? Negative, positive. So controlling is negative, influence is positive. Although influence can be negative. You actually can be a negative influence on somebody. Okay, but thank you. Anyone else?
I would say leading or showing versus forcing.
Leading, showing versus forcing. Yeah.
It puts it in their court. It's their choice. They either are doing it because they're told or they're choosing to do it because they want to.
Yeah. You guys, you're thinking really right on the line.
Is changing somebody else. They actually make a change if you're influencing them.
Influences, they make the change. So let me just give you a visual. There is a hard line. It's a cement barrier between control and influence. You actually cannot control anyone. Okay? Even if you put a gun against their head, that may appear to be control, but is it? No. They're still going to choose what they think. You could control maybe their physical body by holding them down, but ultimately their mind is theirs, and they will choose whatever they will. All we have with each other is influence. And it's such an important concept because you realize that you're accountable for you, but who's accountable for all these other people? They are. Yeah, I can never be accountable for you. I can only be accountable for me. And with that accountability, I'm going to work to be a positive influence on the people that I love. That's what a parent is. A parent really is a person who can be a positive or negative influence. That's what a boss is, a peer, a friend, a neighbor, a stranger. We either influence each other positively or negatively. And we do that through a variety of ways. One is being an example. That is underused or underthought about. How much we watch each other and are looking to see what you do, and then I'm going to do it or not do it. And we often forget it. I mean, this is a typical story about the mom who's taking her 16-year-old son out to drive, and she's speeding, and she says to her son, "Now, I'm doing this, but you be sure you don't." You know, hello, is that son going to speed? Yeah. It doesn't matter so much what we say. It so matters what we do. Interestingly, when we want to influence, we tend to talk. And then it's an important subject, what happens? We repeat and we raise our voice, right? Okay, now did you hear this? You need to hear this. Make sure you get it, because you got to change. But really, what's far more influential than talking? Listening. So much more. If you have someone you're really worried about and you want to influence them, I challenge you to listen 90%, talk 10. That will be so much more influential than if you talk 90 and listen 10. Because what's the power of listening to anyone at any age?
It validates them.
It validates them. And that's perfect. It validates them. What else does it do? We learn about them because we're listening.
They learn about themselves because they know what they're saying.
That's it. They learn about themselves. How often do we really need advice? Not so often. We just need people to listen and I'll figure it out. Yeah, and if I make the choice myself, I'm far more likely to be successful and accountable versus like, well, I'm just doing what you told me to do. How often does that work? Yeah, not so much. When we understand influence, we can love unconditionally. We can say, I honor that this is your choice, regardless of what you choose. I will love you. We can also be consistent on rewards and consequences. By the way, they don't control people. Just look at the gel. Look at your own teenager and you'll know quickly, right? Rewards and consequences do not control behavior. But they influence people. They may indeed respond to the reward you give them or the consequence. But the more consistent we are in doing that, the more influential we are. And finally, if you recognize this power of influence, you may start to get more picky on what battles you choose. You know, you might decide, lots of things are not worth my energy. This one is. What is it I'm going to do to be a really good influence? The fourth element that I think happy women do is both grateful and mindful. And it's interesting, I haven't put these two together until recently, and I'm almost discovering that when I'm grateful, it's easier for me to be mindful. And when I'm mindful, it's easier for me to be grateful. So mindful really is about living in the moment, this moment that we have. That I focus my brain on not moving forward onto all the to-do list we have, or on backward all the things we didn't get done before you came to this meeting, and just focus on being present. And a really nice way of doing that is being grateful for what's around you. The quote that's probably affected my life more than any other quote, and it's interesting, I'm growing into it. It's even becoming more meaningful as I grow older, is this one by Nadine Stair. Oh, I've had my moments, and if I had to do it over again, I'd have more of them. In fact, I'd try to have nothing else, just moments, one after another, instead of living so many years ahead of each day. Isn't that powerful? What happens when we live in the moment? Anybody tried it lately? Yeah. Our stress, yeah, it kind of comes laser focused. I enjoy right here, yeah. There's a new little phrase I have about be where you are. Isn't that cool? Yeah, that's a good idea. Be where I am rather than pretending I'm here when I'm really not. Terry.
You become more aware too, and I think you probably have more moments.
I love that. You become more aware, and I think acute of our senses, what's really happening, and we have more moments. I think they can be addicting once you really get into it. Right along with that is a wonderful little exercise that helps us to be grateful. And this exercise has actually been proven to increase both health and mental health. Can you believe it? It's maybe as good as Prozac. Maybe not quite as good. But it's cheaper. Okay, so it's called 3 Good Things, and I want you all to do it right now. So catch somebody at your table. If there's threesome, that's okay. I want you to share with one another 3 good things that have happened to you in the last 24 hours. Do it. All right. Come back. Come back. It is. Okay, here we go. Come back. All right, here you are. Okay. Giddy up. Let's go. Hello. Woo-hoo. Good job. Okay. Now, why do you think doing that exercise every day could change your life? It changes your focus, right. What's crazy, if you had a hard time identifying 3, if I had asked you to identify 10 negative, you would have had no problem. Because that really is how our brain works. Our brain looks at things that are potentially dangerous or threats much quicker than it looks at things that are beautiful and going well. So we're almost hardwired to look at what's not going well. So, but to balance that is what this activity does. And it all of a sudden makes you look at, wow, what's going right? So it's a very powerful exercise in balancing our world around us. Can you almost feel the energy that it gives you too? It's an antidote to negativity, a very quick antidote.
I was just going to say to the whole thing about the moments is it made me think about moments that I probably otherwise they would have just been gone.
Exactly. That's been my ahas of putting these together, because things I'm grateful for could be, in fact, from those moments. And the more I live in the moment, the more I can find that I'm grateful for, just little teeny things.
You found out how powerful it was, didn't you?
I did. I did see how powerful it was, yes. And what I also love, I suspect none of you shared what the world, that marketing would tell us would make you happy. I mean, I don't know if any of you said, well, I bought new shoes at Nordstrom's, although that really does make me happy. You know, but what I hear as I listen to people, it's about my grandbaby loved me, my husband made breakfast, I woke up today. Really simple little things that we don't give due to. It's really, life is made up of those, not what TV or marketers would have us think is what gives us happiness. So I love this principle, and I really do see happy women who live these 2 elements, and they have a peace about them that you just like, oh, I want to come and spend time with you, because you know how to live in these moments. The 5th one that I see over and over again is this notion of being forgiving. At Intermountain Healthcare, all those who I train know that every class I give, I show this chart. And if I ever get a tattoo, it will be this. Truly, okay? So someday, when you got to see my tattoo. But why I love it is because it's very simple, that I come to a situation, and in that situation, I really have 2 choices. I can be a victim or I can be accountable. And in some ways, it's I'm going to focus on what I don't control, or I'm going to focus on what I do control. But the highlight of this chart is really that when I'm a victim, I blame. Blaming, we really need to look at this action, this attitude of blaming, because it really contradicts being resilient. I think being happy, being growth-minded, it has a lot of damage to it. And I don't know that it matters who you blame, okay? Now you're thinking, well, that's about blaming other people. Yeah, we do that. We blame other people. But you know what? We as women, guess who we blame the most? Ourselves. Yeah, and I find that a little unique to women. Men tend to blame others, right, or their golf club, but not necessarily themselves. But we as women, that is maybe the first person we go and just beat the heck out of. We really say very mean things to ourselves. I mean, it's one thing what we say about our neighbor, but listen what you say about yourself. You know, very mean things. And as soon as I'm into that blame mode, I'm down here being a victim. And I just get stuck there with no growth. It really is a dead end, and it takes so much energy to blame that we give up our energy to solve the problem. The antidote absolutely is forgiveness. And it's a powerful notion that we may have to practice a whole lot more in order to be happy. And it turns out that forgiveness is what allows us to keep moving forward and to learn from each of our mistakes or our trips and our falls. If we could forgive, get back up, and move, that's what gives us strength and ultimately happiness. At the same time, not holding offenses, learning to let go and forgive other people is just a powerful activity. And it's maybe one of the harder ones up on my list, is learning to have a heart of forgiveness, a soft heart, both for yourself and for other people. There's a quote from Buddy Hackett. I should have shared it, but many of my audiences have no idea who Buddy Hackett is anymore. But it's something about, I've learned to give up worrying about what other people are worrying about them being offended, because while I'm home, sick and distressed, they're out dancing. And that's the truth, you know. Offenses and not forgiving hurts us more than anybody else. And it really does, I think, stop us from being happy. And last but not least, this is a new element that I've added to my happiness list. I read a book on vacation by Carol Dweck. Her name's on the next slide. Powerful book, and if you're into YouTube, she has a TED Talk that's worth watching. And it ties so closely into the things I've shared, but why it's come up is because as Director of Employee Wellness, I keep hearing why people don't believe that they can get healthier, that they can increase their well-being. I hear their story. And what I've discovered, or what Carol points out, is that there really are two mindsets that we as humans may have. One is a fixed mindset, and that's where we believe that we are who we are and that we really can't change. Okay? And that I am who I am, and so I really can't even risk doing something hard, because if I fail, that will hurt who I am, my identity. I can't risk failing. That's just too scary. And consequently, these people sit back and are often critical of other people who are out there changing, and or that if they say, okay, I'll try to change, what they do is set themselves up for failure. So just in the realm of health, what I hear these people say is, yeah, I tried a diet. You know, I did that. I did that 21-day grapefruit thing. It didn't work, so diets just aren't for me. You know, or I went for a walk one day. Didn't turn out too good. So don't think I'll do that again. Okay, very fixed mindset. That's different than a growth mindset. And growth mindset is when we believe we can do anything. It's when we say, I can conquer anything as long as I take it a step at a time. And it can be hard, but I can do it. Curious, as I flew down this morning, I sat next to a young man who had become a social worker. And that's what I am. And in the course of our conversation, and we really didn't talk very much, but he said, boy, I wish I'd become a psychiatrist, but I thought it was going to be too hard. And I've met some psychiatrists, and I think he didn't say this, but I almost heard it, and they're not any smarter than me. But he's like, man, I wish I had spent all this time becoming a psychiatrist. And I thought, because at some point in your life, you were a fixed mindset. You thought that was too hard. And now you're discovering that it wasn't that hard. You could have done it. But I just picked up on fixed mindset. So when we have a growth mindset, we believe we can do anything as long as we realize that we're always going to fail, but it's about getting up, learning, and trying again and again. And I love that notion. In fact, you're all welcome to join my Pinterest. Anybody Pinterest? I don't do anything else, but I Pinterest, and it's under Terry Flint. I have a section under growth mindset. So here are my couple of quotes I've been getting that support growth mindset. C.S. Lewis said, "You're never too old to set another goal or to dream another dream." Did you know that Grandma Moses began her painting career at age 76? How about this from Georgia O'Keeffe? "I've been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, and I've never let it keep me from doing a single thing I wanted to do." Is that just masterful? I mean, that is growth mindset. And I love that it's just said, I want to live until I die. I want to live and learn and keep doing things that are hard until I die. And nothing gives me more happiness, really, than that kind of idea and that kind of notion. So let me just wrap up with them, these 6. They choose happiness. They let go of what they can't control and focus on what they do. They understand the power of influence and the power of letting go of control. They're grateful and mindful. They forgive, not blame, and they love to grow. Any ones that you would add? All you happy women?
Kind of tied in, but serving others comes back over and over again.
That's a great one. They service others. With the notion of influence, perhaps, an unconditional service is even sweeter than conditional. Lovely.
Besides their dream, they find their passion.
Ah, that's very true. Think of Georgia O'Keeffe or Grandma Moses. They found their passion, even at 76. Any others?
They share their joy. And so the person that's receiving that sharing is lifted. And even maybe a bystander who happens to overheard it is lifted. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's influence. That is exactly what's meant by that. They influence us and influence others. Good. Anything else you would add? I'm going to add these to mine.
For me, I think it's the little things that count. I mean, I can't tell you how many times just a simple smile
Yeah.
makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Not only for those that receive it, but for those that give it.
Yeah, simple things count. Awesome. And I think that's growth mindset, is that they understand it's not all or nothing, that it is little things that really do add up to big things. You don't have to do it all.
I like that it's usually something small that will solve a big problem rather than something big that solves a big problem.
I love it.
Sometimes just a minor adjustment.
Exactly. Small things do answer big problems.
I think there's power in our work environment. It's been really, talked a lot about, but knowing what works for us. Where is our zen? Where do we refill? And it's taking that time out to love ourselves enough to go do that.
Love it. So she talked about knowing your zen, or that's that passion, what fills me up, what gives me new energy.
Being grateful
Yeah,
every day, every moment, every person that you meet.
yeah,
Knowing how hard it is for some others.
yeah.
Being grateful.
Mindful and grateful.
Just one more thing. Also take a break. Does anybody play Spider Solitaire besides me? Four suits? Okay, there you go. There you go. It's just nice to have something where your mind can kind of ponder things and yet you're doing something.
Yeah, that's my Pinterest. Yeah,
Kind of fun.
yeah. Awesome. 2 more and then we better get going.
I just wanted to add the perspective there, just loving who you are, even the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Love who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, love it. Wait, was it you, Paula?
Oh, I was just going to say that I watch my great-grandchildren play
Yeah,
and learn from them in their conflict, when they have conflicts.
So she's learning from her great-grandchildren, especially when they have conflicts, how they're figuring it out. Lovely. I hope you've added those things to your list. Those are wonderful. Let me just end. I have a sign in my bedroom that reminds me this. Happiness is not a destination. It's a way of life. And then this is a fun one to end with. When you smile about the life you live, you end up living a life worth smiling about. That's my hope for all of you. Thank you.